Hi everybody, this is Nishika, and I'm your course instructor for the subject of business communication. And I hope you guys must have watched my introductory video. If you haven't watched it, you can just go to our YouTube channel and watch the video, it's still there. Okay, the course of business communication is divided into four submodules, and today I'm going to discuss the first module, which is Introduction and Basic Concepts. So, let's see what we have in this module. So, first of all, we'll be discussing what is communication. Secondly, we'll be going through the meaning of business communication. Then we'll see what are its features, its importances, and what are the various types of business communication. And lastly, we'll be going through the process of business communication. So let's see, what is communication? So basically, the word communication has been derived from the Latin word, which is communis, which means to share. So, communication has been defined as the exchange of thoughts, messages, or information by speech, visual signals, writings, or behavior. So, it's basically the transmission of an idea or feeling so that the sender and receiver share the same understanding. So basically, communication is the activity or process of sharing of or exchanging ideas, feelings, information, experiences between two or more persons, or it is an act of transmitting the information which is actually communicated by the usage of some means. So, basically, the communication has been defined in this manner. So now let's see what is the meaning of business communication, which is our main course. So business communication is the sharing of information between people within an organization that is performed for the commercial benefit of the organization. So basically, business communication is the process of transferring information from one person to another within or outside the business environment, we can say, and that is for the commercial benefit of the organization. So basically, benefit should be attached to the communication. So now let's see some of the features of business communication. So to communicate effectively in the business world, it's not an easy job. So we have to put a lot of efforts to master this art, we can say. So a good communicator should possess the some of these following characteristics while communicating. So the first one in the list is conciseness. So whatever one has to say while communicating in a business world should be very brief, to the point, and concise. So basically, the undue explanations and very lengthy sentences should not be used, but the message should be conveyed to the receiver in a fewest possible words, and we can do so by just avoiding unnecessary repetitions or by organizing our message properly. Okay, so the second one in the list is clarity and simplicity. So it is also an important feature of business communication. So, to ensure clarity, the message can be presented in a very simple manner, and it should be accurate, simple, and familiar words with short sentences can be used so that it is easily understandable by the normal user. So the next in the list is logical development of ideas. So basically, the purpose of business communication is to communicate information in such a manner that everyone comprehend or understands it properly. So this goal can be achieved to a greater extent by making a proper sequence and logical development of ideas in a paragraph, we can say, or a single idea must be conveyed in a paragraph. So the next one in the list is concreteness. So concreteness is also an essential requirement of effective business communication, And to bring the concreteness in communication, we can follow some of the guidelines, such as we can use visual aids like graphs, charts, tables, and diagrams. We can use some specific facts or figures, or we can use some active voices in our communication. So the next one is accuracy, which is very important to maintain efficiency of the business communication. And because inaccurate expressions may hamper the effect of business communication, and it may ultimately lead to ruining the whole purpose of communicating anything. So accuracy must be maintained in terms of information or the facts, figures, grammars, or the usage of words, spellings which we are using while communicating. So the next one is in the list is objectivity. So, objectivity means that we should be clear in our mind, like why are we communicating? What is the extent of, like, what is the scope of communicating? Why are we communicating a particular message to the receiver? So, based upon that, communication can be made more effective. So that sums up the some of the features of business communication. Now let's see some of the importances of business communication. So nowadays, business communication is a very effective tool to achieve the goals. So the first one in the list is that it helps to present the knowledge related to business world effectively. So, because business communication helps the manager to present and receive their technical or professional information effectively. And in the modern world, when the flow of information is very fast, it becomes all very important to communicate effectively and efficiently. Hence, it serves our purpose. Second one is work efficiency. So, see, when everything is effectively communicated to the proper recipient of the information, ultimately the time and the energy that gets wasted by hit and trial gets reduced, and work efficiency can be achieved. So the next is important means of interaction. So nowadays interaction becomes very important because the businesses are turning global. So to unite the organizations at different levels, a continuous interaction among various components is very much required. So the communication is the very important means of interaction. So the next one is that it handles competition properly. So the modern world is highly competitive in nature, and to meet the challenge of competition, we must have the adequate information of the competitors. It is the only way, with the help of effective communication, is possible. So yeah, it serves our purpose of handling the competition properly. So the last one is mutual trust and confidence. So when the things are communicated effectively, confidence is aroused between the employee, you can say, and a feeling of mutual trust is also developed, which ultimately impacts positively in the work. So these were the pointers that have explained the importance of business communication and why do we need to improve our skills while communicating in the business world. So now let's see what are the different types of business communication. So business communication is can take many forms. So we have classified these forms on four bases. So the first one is based upon the structure. Second one is based upon the medium of communication. Third one is based on flow of direction, and fourth one is based on response. So now let's study each one of them in a bit detail. So the first one is based on structure. So upon based upon the structures, we have classified business communication into two types. The first one is formal, and second one is informal business communication. So let's see what are these. So a formal communication is a regular and organized channel of work related communication within a company through a proper medium among themselves. So, the highlight of this definition is that it is a regular and organized channel which take place through a proper medium. So, everything is defined beforehand. And our formal communication is also further divided into various parts such as chain, wheel, circular, free flow, and inverted V formal communication networks. So I'm not just going deep down into each one of them in details, as we'll be covering them in our further modules. So yeah. The second one is informal business communication based upon the structure. So there is no particular system which is followed for informal communication. So basically, the communication take place in a free manner. Further, these informal communication have also been categorized into four networks, which we call as single strand, grapevine, probability, and cluster. And then we have divided business communication on the based upon the medium of communication. So we have two categories under this. First one is verbal, and second one is non-verbal. So verbal communication means transmission of information which is enclosed in words, whether written or said, is known as verbal communication. So verbal communication can be oral or written depending upon how it is enclosed. Like if we are just telling just by word of mouth, we are communicating our message to the recipient, then it is an oral verbal communication. And if we are just writing a letter or by a written medium we are communicating it, it is known as written verbal communication. The second one is non-verbal communication. So, as we generally say that actions speak louder than words. So, does that actually mean? So, non-verbal communication means expressing information other than words is known as non-verbal communication. And there are also different types of non-verbal communication, which includes kinesis, paralanguage, chronomics, artifacts, proxemics, and haptics. So yeah. So the third category is based upon the flow of direction. So we have four categories under this. First one is upward communication. So in upward communication, the subordinates share their problems, suggestions, and ideas with the senior. So the flow is from bottom to the top. So the second one is downward communication. So when the senior passes on orders, instructions, policies, rules, norms, etc. to their subordinate, it is known as downward communication. So the flow of communication here is from top to bottom. So the next is horizontal communication. So when communication take place among two people holding a similar position in the organization, it is known as horizontal communication. For example, a sales manager provides the sales revenue sheet to the finance manager. So it is the example of horizontal communication. And the last one in the list is diagonal communication. So, when the senior of a particular department shares some information with the subordinate of other department and vice versa, then it forms diagonal communication. For example, a human resource management wants a sales executive for excessive leave. So, it is an example of diagonal communication. So the fourth category is based on the response. So the first one is one way and second one is two way. So in one way communication, the sender passes on the information to the receiver without seeking any feedback or response. For example, we generally see the advertisements for different products on television, or we see different banners on the roadside depicting about a product or specifying about that. So that way they didn't expect any immediate feedback from the recipient of the information. So but they are conveying their message. So this is an example of one way communication. Next one is two-way communication. So this is when the sender shares some information with the receiver, and in turn the receiver responds to such information. It is known as two-way communication. For example, the manager discusses the problem of low productivity with the team and they give reasons for the same. So the manager is getting the immediate feedback from the recipient. So this is a perfect example of a two-way communication. Now we move on to our next subtopic, which is the process of business communication. So, this process of communication is like the steps that we follow while communicating effectively, or we can say while transmitting our message to the receiver of the information. So, it follows certain steps. Let's see each one of them in detail. So there are two persons. One is the sender, and second is the receiver. They are the endpoints of the communication. So the sender basically sends the information, or he or she is the person who initiates the message that needs to be transmitted. So he or she, that is the sender, is the source of content, or he or she has the content that needs to be transmitted to the receiver of the information that ultimately gets benefited from the information that is being supplied by the sender. So once the sender forms the message, it is being encoded. So basically, encoding is putting the targeting message into appropriate medium, which may be verbal or non-verbal, depending upon the situation, time, space, and nature of the message to be sent. So basically, the medium that is to be chosen by the sender, it can vary from message to message. So it depends upon the characteristics of the message or the content that needs to be delivered, and the characteristics which are considered while choosing a medium are situation, time, space, and nature of the message that is to be sent. So under this second stage of encoding, a proper medium is chosen by the sender through which the message is communicated to the receiver, plus the message that needs to be communicated is put into a proper format. That is, we make use of the visual aids, or we can just encode them in a easily understandable and decoded manner. And the third one is the message. So message is basically the content or the subject matter of the communication. So basically, without message, there can't be any communication which can take place. So we can say the message is the heart of the business communication or communication in itself. So the next is decoding. So decoding refers to interpreting or converting the sent message into intelligible language, or it simply means comprehending the message. So decoding means getting to understand what the sender has tried to convey. So next is receiver. So as I told that it is the end, this is the end person who ultimately receives the message and for whom the message is meant. So yeah, then the receiver gives the feedback to the sender, which is the end result of the communication process, and ultimately the receiver reacts or responds to the communication that is being sent by the sender. So that was the whole process of business communication. Now I'm going to discuss a disruption or a barrier that comes in between the whole process of business communication, and we call it as a noise. So noise is basically any type of disruption that interferes with the transmission or interpretation of information from the sender to the receiver. So it is anything that hampers the effectiveness of the communication. So as you can see in the picture that the boy wants to convey a message to the girl through a proper channel that is being adopted. But there's a bird chirping noise which is interrupting in between, and which we consider as an external noise. So this was the perfect example for the noise coming in between the effectiveness of the communication. There are other barriers as well to business communication, which we'll definitely going to discuss in our further sub modules. So, yeah. So I have taken an example of for elaborating more upon the elements of the business of the communication process. So this girl is wants to transmit a message to the another girl. So the girl in a white top is the sender basically, and the medium she has adopted to communicate the message is her mobile phone, and the girl in the pink top is the receiver for whom the message is meant, and the so she has put in the message to via her phone to her friend, so she's the receiver, and as you can see that she ultimately gives her feedback, that is saying yeah, be there by 8:30. That is the feedback which is being given by the recipient to the sender, and which completes the process of process of communication. So yeah, the message is being sent by the sender through the medium which is being adopted, which is a mobile phone, and the girl in the pink top is the receiver. And the message was that movie starts at 9, can you drive us? And she ultimately gives the feedback, which completes the communication process. So, with this, I come to the end for this sub module. I hope you guys must have gained something or understood the concepts that I discussed today. And if you people have any doubts, you can ask or let me know right away. Okay, in case if there's no doubts, so I just want to thank everybody for joining in. And my next sub module is being scheduled for next Friday, that is 11th of March. And the topic for next submodule would be oral communication and presentation skill. And I would want my audience to come and listen to me on my second module. And thank you for joining in. Do like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody.